Perfect. All right. So good evening and welcome everyone. My name is Nina Hirota and I am the VP of programs for the chapter. Thank you. And thank you so much to all of you for joining tonight. But I think that your decision to join was an easy one with a panel like this. This was really this is a great job and an honor to me. And especially because, as you all know, we are celebrating Women's History Month, and our monthly event will celebrate not only the History Month and the International Women's Day, but also the phenomenal leaders who have been making a difference in talent development. And what I find the perfect connection between the theme and what we are doing tonight is that this year's theme is Choose to Challenge. And we have four phenomenal trailblazers whose range of accomplishments are just so impressive and evidence that absolutely. So Angie Brainerd, for instance, designs talent solutions for right management. We're talking about a global workforce solutions company, recipient of the, was it 2019? 2019, right, Angie? Women's Choice Award for being one of the best companies to work for women. How about that? Beth Simonetti leads HR for Tech Data, and this is a Fortune 100 global technology enterprise and one of the most admired companies that serves over 100 countries. Maria, uh, she elevates education at NYU, and she's just so bright. In addition to overlooking a series of programs in one of the largest private universities in the U.S., she's also into virtual reality now. So it's a phenomenal way of looking at developing people, combining technology or leveraging technology. And Stephanie Harrison has had a phenomenal career with Thrive Global, Deloitte, LinkedIn, and she decided to dedicate herself and through by entrepreneuring and founding her own company dedicated to well-being and happiness. So how about the new happy? How about that for your company's name? Wouldn't you want to work for the new happy, or work or collaborate with someone who proposes to make us all happier? So anyway, very pleased. And before we start with questions for them, I wanted to share that we had a difficult decision earlier this week, which was we wanted to make it as interactive as possible. But we also wanted to pretty much get as much of their wisdom as we could. So they all indicated they're very eager to take questions, and I will ask you to please leverage the chat at any time. So remember to add who your question is for, and type your questions in the chat because we will all be monitoring, okay? And when we open to Q&A, they will look to answer as many questions as possible, but if unable to, they also indicated that they would be willing to send you a direct response. Isn't that phenomenal? So please remember to include your full name and your email as you submit your question, okay? Makes it a lot easier. We are going to save the chat and then provide it to our panelists. And we wanted to get your opinion about this event. So there's a quick poll at the end, and we will really appreciate your participation there. So with that, let's start your engagement and participation by asking you to please type why you decided to join tonight. And with that, while you're at it, let me welcome our phenomenal panel. So welcome, ladies, and thank you again so much for joining tonight. And I'm going to ask this very first question to all four of you, which is, you are leaders in your industries, you are role models for many, you chose to challenge. So what is your leadership philosophy? And I'm going to start with you, Maria, since you were first to join.
All right, Nina, it's a pleasure to be the first. I'm excited to be here. My leadership philosophy, leading with optimism. Leading with optimism has helped me achieve success with a variety of teams that I have led in various companies. I believe a leader who is optimistic about everyone's potential will constantly be on the lookout for qualities and traits they wish to cultivate in themselves and in their team members. Cultivating includes professional development, coaching, informal learning, which I love, and VR, which we'll talk about later. Focusing on everyone's innate potential gives you more opportunities to leverage the unique talents of your employees.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What about you, Stephanie? What's your leadership philosophy?
Thank you again for having me. I'm so grateful to be here and to connect with all of you. As I was thinking about this, it came down to me to leading with compassion. And I believe that leading with compassion is something that we really need, especially in these challenging times when we have many people and organizations around the world who are experiencing so many great challenges and who are still getting up and doing their best every day. And it's the act of being there for somebody for their whole self, not just who they are at work, but who they are as a person through what they're going through, as well as challenging people. We can do that with compassion. We can inspire people to do their best and to take risks. And if there are failures or setbacks, we can respond to those with compassion. That has been the leadership philosophy that has most inspired me and the great leaders I've had the privilege to work with, and something that I strive to adopt in my work as well.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. And Angie, what is yours?
I was trying to figure that out when you asked me that question. In my mind, a leadership philosophy is something that is developed over time, right? So I did not come to my career with any sort of leadership point of view at all. And when I think back to my first roles and first opportunities to be in leadership, I was fortunate to get that opportunity before I technically had a leadership role. And I started working at Disney, so you might be familiar, right? So that's a great place to discover what is your leadership philosophy and point of view. And I think over time, the different mentors that I bumped into and other leaders that I gained experience from really helped me shape, what has become my point of view today. And where I am at this moment is probably different from where I'll be, later on in my career, because I really believe like it's a journey. And where I am right now is, I think it's important to lead with grace. Have a value system and believe in it, and lead a little bit by reputation, right? So if you are true to yourself, authentic, and are leading aligned with what your organization believes in and what you really believe in, people will naturally follow you, right? And it's not that, it's not without effort. Certainly leadership takes effort, both for yourself and for others, but I believe strongly in supporting your team. Mm-hmm. And if you stand behind your team, they'll stand you up, and you will become the leader that you need to be in the moment that you're in. And that's where my head is at the moment around leadership.
Wow, it's just so inspiring. Thank you. I hope you're able to transfer that same feeling to the clients and the solutions you're designing.
We try. Yeah, that's the
what
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And Beth, what about you?
Sure.
What's your leadership philosophy? Because it worked well. Look at you.
Well, going last on the panel means that there's a little bit of overlap, because when I read this question a while back, I was trying to plan for that. The first thing that came to me was with leading with optimism, which is what Maria said. And I think, my team would tell you that I am, sometimes to a fault optimistic about what we can accomplish and how we'll get through something. But I think it's really important. But, probably a little, just my style, a little bit more probably relaxed is, I never thought of it, describing it quite this way till I saw a TED Talk a while ago. And I would say it's always being in ready mode. So whatever happens, being in ready mode and not letting anything trip me up. And so I would say both in my professional life and in my personal life, people would describe me as very even keeled. And sometimes that frustrates people because I don't go up and down with them. I try and get them back here. And I think being in ready mode is the opposite of being crazy. Like everything is crazy. And ready mode means being prepared, making things as simple for yourself as possible. And when we get to some of the pieces of advice, I have a few of the things that I've really used for a long time that help me, and just relentlessly prioritizing and reminding people that even though something seems important, it's not our today priority. And so, that idea of always being in ready mode.
I love that. And since I wanted to segue with the next question, since they're so closely related. How do you balance empathy and vulnerability without being perceived as weak or overly assertive? Because that's the eternal conundrum with women in leadership roles. How do you balance? Beth.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up with you.
Yes. This is the hardest one for me to answer, honestly, because it's hard. It's hard to balance having the right level of empathy and showing your vulnerability, and at the same time, persevering and standing up for what you believe in. And in many of our roles, people here today, I bet we are challenged to take a stance on something that might not always be the popular opinion on things. And in particular, in my role, as it's more varied than, just the talent development piece of things. But in this day and age, I lead the crisis management team globally. So how we have managed through the COVID pandemic, and, standing by the values that we put in place and said, this is what we're going to do. And that gets challenged, and standing up for that without coming across as too assertive. So it's hard for me to explain how to do it. I think it's sticking to your principles. It's something that I, think people would describe me as having a lot of grit. And that doesn't mean always the smartest or the most skilled, but it means persevering for the long haul. And, having the stamina to continue to focus on the end game and what you want to get done. And frankly, it's about working hard, and people notice that. And I think that it, like you said, it's very intertwined in your leadership style, how you manage that.
Yeah, I can imagine. And would you say that the notion of weakness or being overly assertive is indeed something you have observed?
Absolutely. I would say it's more, I've observed people having a perception that the way women come across might be one or the other, whether it's actually true or not. Because I could give you lots of examples where a woman would describe or say something, and be seen as being overly assertive. And a man would say it in the very same way, and he was assertive instead of aggressive. Or and something else I continue to notice, and I've started to actually just point out, because I'm really old and at a point in my career where what do I have to lose is my new motto. And so when you're in a meeting and a woman says something and it doesn't get much recognition, and a man says the same thing, has the same idea, and then it gets recognized, that's a real thing. I see it. I witnessed it. And I've started calling it out and say, oh, wait a minute, Angie just said that. That's exactly what
I
she
love it.
and so I think, that's a hard thing to do, and I didn't do it early on, but it's something that I think you have to just get more and more comfortable on your skin, and you have to have kind of a what do I have to lose attitude.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What about you, Angie? How do you balance assertive empathy, vulnerability, without being perceived as weak or overly assertive? I think I've learned some of that. I've observed some of that, but we would love to hear you.
Well, I'm not sure that I've mastered that yet, but I'll say what I aspire to. And Beth said something earlier that resonated with me. She talked about stamina. And I do think you have to have a little bit of stamina to kind of hang in there sometimes when you have to make a tough decision or have to make that unpopular decision. Another thing I learned as a younger leader is that, you don't necessarily measure your success by how many people really want to be your friend and, like you so much. I mean, it's, sometimes you have that individual that is not going to connect with your point of view or what is, the right thing to be happening at the time. And you have to kind of hang in there and be firm and, stay true to the values at hand. But how you have to earn that a little bit in building your credibility. I started out working beyond my Disney career in a construction industry role. So I earned my stripes pretty fast by showing that I could also do. So I wasn't afraid to literally get my hands dirty, learn to operate equipment, and, play those traditionally male roles and, show that I can also, make decisions, be a functional part of the operations, understand how the business works, be a part of that, business decision-making process. And then through that, when you do raise your point of view or your perspective, and you have that establishment of trust and credibility, you're perceived differently, right? Maybe than if you didn't put in that effort up front. So that's always been something I think that is important, is to show your value, prove your value of how you contribute to the business conversation. And when you do have to be empathetic, you use it in the right measure, right? Or when you do have to be firm, you use it in the right measure. So I think some self-awareness is very important. Emotional intelligence, all those kinds of skill sets that come into play are critical to, again, how you support your reputation as a leader influences how you're perceived and received.
Yeah. It's the second time you mentioned reputation. So good point, and something to watch for, especially these days.
Yeah.
Thank you, Angie. Now, I wanted to direct this next question to Maria and Stephanie, because I think that when we think about being leaders, targeting innovation, you will probably be able to give us not the Beth and Angie wouldn't, but you have the freshest examples, especially given your current priorities, but you pretty much are topping an amazing trajectory with very innovative approaches in virtual reality, in well-being, and the entire philosophy of wellness. Can you share more? And let's start with you, Maria, and what you're doing with virtual reality.
Sure, sure. So thanks, Nina. I'm an early adopter of VR. It's a powerful tool that can be used in a variety of ways. Virtual reality literally makes it possible to experience anything, anytime, anywhere. It is the most immersive type of reality technology and can convince the human brain that it is somewhere it really isn't. Now, I just give you an example, and I'm going to go over a couple for leisure, for training, for being mindful. So I'll start in terms of for leisure. So at the end of the day, I've had a long day at NYU, and maybe I'm stressed out. I'm going to put on that headset, the Oculus Quest, the latest headset, and I'm going to travel to Africa, to Europe, to Italy, Antarctica, and I'm going to have this great experience. You know, I'm going to be in this headset. But the most important thing right now is that now there's a socialization aspect of it. So now I can invite my friends and my family to see the Metropolitan Museum of Art or a museum in another country, and we're traveling together. That's extraordinary. And to give you an idea of the importance and the powerful piece of AltSpace VR, which is a socialization app, is I want you to think about, I put a post on LinkedIn about Microsoft, who had an amazing event on March 4th. It was the Developers Conference on Ignite. And they had over 3,000 people in VR. Beautiful, it was ambitious, it was successful. And I get really excited because I've been an early adopter and I knew it was coming. So what makes VR in training effective, right? It is the immersive quality. So once you put on the headset, you're not looking at your phone, you're not typing an email, you're not going to pay attention to something else. Now, there are a variety of use cases in different industries, such as retail. Walmart, they use the Oculus Rift for their pilot Walmart training program, Walmart Training Academy, with different VR scenarios. There are programs for different positions and occupations. And this, all of us who are educators could really appreciate this. They said that 70% trained on the Rift outperformed those trained via other conventional tools and techniques. In 2018, they bought thousands to really expand their training. And it's being used in social work industries, also in the medical community. The surgeons can practice their procedures before performing them, thereby reducing risk. And one amazing story I want to share with you is an NYU story during this pandemic, which is really amazing. The NYU Myers College of Nursing students usually gain clinical experience both through rotations in local hospitals and at the NYU Myers Clinical Simulation Learning Center. This was not possible during the pandemic. They basically, in 6 days, a monumental task, transferred 42,000 student contact hours for off and on-campus clinicals to be virtual. It took an enormous amount of people. It took a village. They implemented, I get really excited about this part. They implemented a series of new technologies to create robust virtual simulations, and New York State has approved these to count towards the undergraduates' required clinical hours. The technologies included voice-activated nurse avatars, truly amazing.
And let me ask you a question, because I know you were doing something related to coaching through
Yes.
VR. What is it? What is that?
Oh, that's a great question, Nina. Thank you. So coaching on VR, I'm working on a project where we're going to have a coaching simulation in VR to have people experience or make better decisions when they're in stressful situations. So the person would put on their headset, they'd access the VR app, and there would be a scenario. Maybe, Nina, you're in your office and you're hearing one of the folks that works for you, maybe you have your door open and you hear them being irate to a customer or to someone they're working with, right? We're creating this module so that that person who maybe didn't handle that situation the best can go through different scenarios in this headset. But what makes it different, because some of you may be thinking, well, how is that different than e-learning or say, an environment, a scenario in real time, in person? Well, the thing is, it's so immersive. That's all they're doing. And they're going to have to make decisions. They're going to be taking down different paths, and they're going to be transformed. So it is a very unique way. And Nina, here's what I'd say. When I have it ready, I'm happy to do another presentation to demo it to whoever was interested. It's very exciting.
Thank you. It shows in your voice and your passion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there was one more example I wanted to give. So VR is also used for meditation apps. And being mindful is very, very important, especially these days. There are many VR apps that can take you to a garden, an ocean, the beach. And some companies have purchased these headsets so people could take these little mini breaks and de-stress. So a lot of different use cases for virtual reality.
That's
And
very interesting and innovative for organizations, especially at times like these.
yes, yes. And there's more to come. Thank you.
Keep us posted.
I will.
What about you, Stephanie? Why embark on a journey entrepreneuring on well-being?
This is such a great question. I think, really building on what Maria was sharing, I think that one of the what the research tells us is that one of the most important things for our well-being is where we direct our attention. So when you think about VR and what she described as some of the power of VR is that it's immersive. And so you can't be distracted. And I think distraction is one of the things that many of us are struggling and battling in our world today. And also building on what Maria said, technology can be both a force for good, or it can be something that actually harms well-being. And it's all in the design and the development and the application of the technology, as well as the intention with which we use it. And so for me, I believe there's immense potential through the technology that we build to help enhance well-being, which ultimately, as I think all of us know and recognize and believe, is a competitive advantage for the workplace today. Having happy, engaged employees is not only good for them, but it's also good for long-term company outcomes. And for me, I think there's huge possibility and excitement in helping organizations and individuals to harness the power of their attention and use it in more targeted, intentional ways towards things that bring happiness. And so one thing that I think is really exciting is the potential for integrating nudges into the way that we work in order to transform behaviors. We know that many of the desired behaviors are the things that drive performance and well-being in the workplace. And so something that I work on with some of the companies that I work with is how do we integrate these daily nudges and procedures into existing processes like a one-on-one or a team meeting that actually help to serve to amplify well-being, and then in turn obviously have a downstream impact on the individual's performance and their lives.
And how are you measuring your interventions? Because that's the number one thing that finance will ask you before they invest in a program like yours, right?
Of course.
So how are you proving the value of what you're doing?
I think every organization that I've worked with so far has a different metric that they're interested in driving. So whether that's engagement, whether that's right now, like reducing employee stress and improving actual holistic well-being, that has been more of the focus since I've been working. And again, I started working on this in the middle of the pandemic. So I expect things to change as we go back to a somewhat new normal world. But for right now, really the goal is to see an increase in the way that employees feel about coming to work and a decrease in the stress that they're facing. That seems to be the most important thing that I'm hearing.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Very encouraging, especially that more and more organizations are interested in investing in their employees' well-being at times when this is so needed.
Yeah.
Angie, I wanted to direct the next question to you. And I think you, Beth, but I'm going to start with Angie. One of the most important assets that anyone can and should have, especially in this day and age, is a support network. So I wanted you to share a bit about how you built yours, who is in it, and how you use it.
Yeah. So again, it's one of those groups that gets built over time, right? So I have all kinds of people in my support network from all different phases of my life. And I feel like I've had 4 lifetimes already, just all very different experiences along the way, right? And, I grew up in the Midwest, small farming community, and I came to Florida right out of college to start a new job. And so right then, I transformed my life into something that was very different. So, and I moved by myself out of state, knew no one when I came here. So I felt like quickly I needed some, friends or people that had shared experiences. And I was fortunate into, stepping into a role that had that sort of support. So I did a internship program with Disney. So I had immediately a cohort of people that were also in the same kind of life position as me. So I formulated a lot of solid relationships during that time, and we kind of grew together in leadership in our career path. And I still am in contact with many of those people 30 years later. And there are some still there and some all over the country in all different kinds of roles. So it's neat professionally to be able to kind of just leverage that thought partnership and diversity of thought. But I think what's important about building a support network is to, have an open mind, and don't always go to somebody who thinks exactly like you, or does what you like to do, or even does your same job in the same industry. Some of my best sessions, I guess, when I call somebody for advice is with somebody who is completely different from me, thinks completely different. I would never want to kind of live their life, and I think they're completely nuts. But they really help me. They ground me and show me a different perspective, right? And I think that is so useful and valuable. So I tend to gravitate toward those people that have completely different experiences and different personality from me. So I tend to be very conservative in my thinking, and not a risk taker, those kinds of things. And so I go out there to those folks that are entrepreneurs and have no fear, and and just pick their brain about why are you not afraid of this? How do you wrap your head around it? And if I can just glean a small piece of it, it really helps me to be better. So I think that's the fun of it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great point. Thank you, Angie. What about you, Beth?
Yeah, I love this question because I talk about this in particular with oftentimes young people entering their career or interns, those kinds of things. But I think this can apply at any place in your career. I don't think it's ever too early or too late to start doing this. And I refer to it as your personal board of directors. And you want a really wide variety on your board. And, so you don't want your best friend and your mom and your favorite cousin and, the person who likes you and is never going to tell you bad things. You need some of them on your board so that when you're just having a bad day and you need to hear something good, you can go to them. But you also need people who are going to give you really good, constructive, critical feedback as well. You need people who are just going to be your sponsor. Like you can reach out to them if you're applying for another job or looking for a board seat, and people who will back you up and be your sponsor. And then there's people who are really going to be your mentor. And you don't need to tell these people they're on your board. They don't need to know that you even think of them that way. It's just a collection of people that you start to think about how you use them and interact with them and over time. And and again, like Angie said, it really develops over time. As in an early career, you can have a few people who are probably, hopefully for you more like mentors. And then as it becomes more and more, it's other people. I have a colleague from years and years ago who is a harsh critic, and I can call her, I can send her something and say, read this for me. What do you think? Run something by her, and she's not going to sugarcoat anything. And I have a couple in particular former bosses who I would consider sponsors. and mentors, and the list just goes on and on. And if you start thinking about it, I'm sure everybody has this. You just, maybe haven't thought about it in that way as your personal board of directors. But as many of you might know, Tech Data went private, got bought by Apollo Global Management back in the end of June, and went from having a public board, which I don't know, kind of, boy, nobody's on here, but Melanie, don't repeat this back at the office. It was a fairly typical over 65 white guy board that got developed by the owner who started Tech Data 45 years ago in his garage and invited his friends to be board members. Now, over time, that changed a little bit, and I'm happy to say that in the 5 years that I've been there, we had one woman on the board before I got there. We recruited 2 more, and we started to really diversify that board. Then, Apollo comes along, public board goes away, they're done, they're not coming back, and you have an opportunity to develop a new board, because even in a private situation, you have a board. And Apollo has been very interesting that they are looking for very specific skill sets but different ones for each one. They want a really strong finance person. They want a really strong next gen technology person. They want somebody who really understands what, like the AWS platform is and how you do business, in that way. And so that's been a different opportunity to really recruit board members. And although, if you go look at the senior executive team of Apollo Global Management, you're not going to see much diversity. They do support it in their portfolio businesses and have gone out of their way to recruit women onto our new board. So
that's so inspiring and so encouraging to hear. We really need to do a better job there. We really do. So thank you. Thank you for the examples, Beth. And guys, this has been recorded, but it should stay here, okay? I see.
Actually, none of those board members, and I know them well, and they're dear old white men, and they know it, and they would not be surprised that I said that about them. So I'm okay.
They will understand. They're probably learning that they have to promote that and support it as well. Thank you. So this next question, I wanted to ask all 4 of you, because, well, you're models, you're successful, people look up to you. So let me start with you, Stephanie. How do you manage rejection, failure, fear?
Such a good question. I mean, I think that anyone would be lying if they say they don't have a hard time with those things. We have a biological need to feel like we please people. When I say we, I mean all human beings. Like we all want to be liked. We all want to feel like we're doing a good job. And so I think for me, it's been more about learning effective coping strategies for addressing and working with those fears and emotions as they come up. And I think one of the core, very practical things that was very helpful for me was almost replacing those words with new ones. So undergoing a reframe of what they mean. And so, for example, rejection is redirection. So if you are rejected from something, it just means that you're being redirected towards something else. And I find that to be very motivating and inspiring, especially when you're working really hard on something and it doesn't go through, or there's an external setback that you face in your personal or your professional life. Reframing failure as a badge of honor that I tried to do something. So there's no way to avoid failure in our lives. If you want to experience any sort of meaning or fulfillment in your life, we're all going to make mistakes and have those setbacks. And so learning to view those failures as symbols of pride. And I was really inspired by, there's a museum, I believe it's in London, which is called the Museum of Failures, and they highlight exhibits showing failures. And I think that's a really great way to celebrate it. And then finally, for fear, generally I feel most afraid when I'm approaching something really big and meaningful. So if it's very personally important to me, it's often scary to pursue it, and practically learning how to ask myself in those moments of fear, how can I take the smallest possible step in this direction, has been very helpful. Sometimes the smallest step is, feels really, really big, but when you break it down in that way, it makes it more manageable to handle, and supports your more primitive brain, which is terrified of activating any of those social rejection cues, and it can really help to make it a little bit easier.
You just gave me goosebumps. Thank you. And I wrote it here. Thank you.
Thank
What
you.
about you, Angie?
I knew you were
How-
going to call on me, and I'm thinking I really don't want to follow that. So I agree with Stephanie. I mean, she so eloquently put it. I mean, in my mind, it's a mindset, right? So it is about how you frame it, how you're able to process it. Can you compartmentalize and not take everything so personally all the time? And these are the things that I actively work on all the time. Again, not so good at it always, but it's something that it's important to work through. And one thing I think about, in terms of fear, if I'm afraid to do something, I'm usually afraid to do something because I think I'm going to fail at it, and I don't want to fail. Failure is not an option. But I realize you can learn lessons, but I really don't want to. I want it to be great, right? So how do you embark on that sort of journey? And somebody at one point told me, you just need to learn to accept your fate. And once you just accept your fate, you stop worrying about all of the things that are getting in the way of just getting started with something and taking that small step, that Stephanie mentioned. So just accept that you're going to do it, you're going to embark on it, and you're going to be able to work through it because you're capable. And if you're not, then you have your support network, right? So revert to the prior discussion, and tackle it, and know that the journey will be worth it in the end. So I think you have to just take chances, measured chances, and get out there and
And remember, you have a crown.
yeah,
stand
and
for.
just do it, so yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. What about you, Maria?
So it's interesting when I hear Stephanie speaking about taking small steps and Angie reinforcing that. And I think of how education has helped me so much when I have been rejected or have had failure. So I'll give you a quick example, quick story, we're tight for time. But several years ago, I was working in Morris County, New Jersey, and I had a job where I was traveling an hour and a half both ways. So I convinced my husband to move closer. We got 15 minutes closer. And then a year from then I lost my job. So that was devastating to me. It was during the recession, and it was difficult to find work. I think I'm very talented. Nothing was opening up. But I found, I hadn't gotten the master's degree in education yet. So I took the step, that small step of making the application. Then I took the first class. So education, I feel, has always saved me when I've had moments of failure or rejection. And I'm very grateful for education because it always leads me to the right place, to the next place. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I would vouch for that too.
Mm.
But this is not about me. So Beth, what about you? How do you handle? And don't tell us that your board of directors will tell you you will never be rejected. You will never failure.
Oh, no, definitely not. No, just got back from a ski vacation, and it reminded me, we always say, if you're not falling, you're not trying, trying hard enough. So, if you're pushing and you're trying, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to trip, you're going to fall. Hopefully you don't break anything, but it's going to happen. And certainly it's happened to me. And, and I have, lost my cool at times. You make a mistake, and those those are little things, and there can be some other things that are bigger. But, for me, it's taking a moment and just, like you said, reframing, I'd say, kind of regrouping and assessing what happened, but not obsessing about it. It really is just a moment, and then move on. And you figure out how you fix whatever you did. You figure out how you fix, what maybe went wrong. And so for me, it kind of goes back to that grit and always being in ready mode. If you obsess about one mistake, you're never going to be in ready mode for the next thing that comes at you. So it's constantly moving through that all the time. And just a very quick story. I have a daughter who graduated from college this past year, but she was a senior in high school and was getting her number one choice of school was University of Virginia, UVA. And I was in London on business, and she got the rejection letter. And I didn't talk to her for a few hours after. And so I was choked up talking to her, and she said, "Mom, I've had my moment, and I'm not having another one for you. I'm moving on." And I think, okay, that's exactly what I would tell somebody else as well, and I have told people who come in my office, okay, you have your little pity party, be upset. Now, then just move on. You get 10 minutes of wallowing. Now move on. Now, of course, that amount of time, it certainly depends on what the issue is, but, also in what I do and what my team does and what everybody at Tech Data does, it's important work. But I do remind people all the time, we're not saving lives. We're not curing cancer. And so, whatever mistake you made, we can fix. We can move on. We can figure it out.
And through that, you're helping others manage rejection, failure, and fear. Love it. Thank you. I'm monitoring time as well. And it is very difficult to manage a panel like this, I will tell you. But we wanted to leave time for Q&A. So here's the ask. We're going to go through the questions that were posted on chat. But I wanted to ask our panelists as a parting gift to share any advice they can offer to you, to all of you who joined tonight. And if there are any resources that you would recommend to help them with their career, with their leadership, that you please add them to the chat as well. Is that okay? Okay, so with that, I know that we had a few questions here. I do not know that people included who it is for. Let's give it a try. So the first one, what qualities do you see lacking in today's leaders? Georgie, you posted it. Who is this for?
It was for everyone, but Beth already answered it, so whoever's left.
Yeah, my opinion was that I see a lot of lacking of emotional intelligence.
Yep.
And self-awareness. And those are hard ones to teach, I think, and develop. Although all of you are much more skilled and experts in the development side of things.
Kind of, if we had done the perfect job, we would have completely eliminated issues related to lack of EI, but we continue to try. Thank you. Would any other panelists like to take that question or comment on the questions, or should we move to the next one? No? Okay, so there's another question from Sarita, and this could be to any of you. Do you have examples of how your organization supports opportunities for gender equality in development or career progression? And the example is action plans or goals. Sarita, I see that you turned your webcam on. Would you like to comment?
No, I'll give time for them to respond. I think I phrased it okay, thanks.
So who would like to take that question?
I'll just make a couple comments, but I'd love to hear from Angie too, given the, the presence of, so many women leaders at Lehigh Terracin, if they have a different view on this. And I would say, we've got a talent management strategy plan that is, keep adding on, but, 3 years at a time kind of. And I felt we were so behind in actually articulating what leadership behaviors we expected of all of our leaders that it would not be appropriate to set up specific mentoring and development programs for women and or people of color until we did a really good job of articulating what we expected from all of our leaders. And so that's where we started. So we have developed our, leadership behaviors just in the last, and this is a 45-year-old company, and we just developed leadership behaviors about 2.5 years ago. And now have a pretty robust leadership development plan that's required for all of our people leaders to take. And then we've taken that to, if you're not a people leader, we have a version of it as well. And the intent though, in our plan is that as we get through this, and we're very close to having everybody through it, then we will really develop some very specific development programs for women and people of color. But in the meantime, we've got a really great DEI, expectation and culture at Tech Data. And we have a women's group, or we call them BRGs, Business Resource Group, called Elevate. And they have developed their own mentoring and development program, kind of grassroots from that team, which is going really, really well. I don't know, Melanie, do you have you participated, or are you familiar with that? I can't, it has a catchy name and I blanked on it.
For the women's BRG?
Yes.
I believe it's Elevate.
Yeah, the BRG is called Elevate, but their mentoring program has
I'm not sure.
I can't remember. It's new and they're rolling it out, and it's really matching, matching mentees with mentors. It's very, again, it's not driven out of the talent management or HR group. It's driven from the Elevate group. So that's just one thing.
Great. I like the idea of people creating their own mentorship program. It's not, things do not need to be pushed by corporate. There needs to be ownership and drive, or the grit you mentioned a couple of times, Beth, to really go after things. Would any of the other panelists like to comment?
Yes.
Go
Hi,
ahead.
Nina. Yes. So we have various mentoring programs at NYU. One of the programs that I really think is making a big difference is the NYU Global Inclusive Leadership and Management Institute. It's a great program. I went through it. You really connect with other, women leaders, and there's diverse leaders, and you have a really good chance to see the work that they're doing and mentoring and create mentoring tracks and things like that. So it's a great program. They have a lot. Yeah, we have a lot of programs.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And I'll just say quickly, I mean, I would agree with what Beth is describing. We at Right Management do, support programs for specific groups, although it's more so work for all leaders, right? So more by level of leader, and that establishment of foundation of what it means to be a leader in your organization is really important, and that crosses all boundaries, right? And so it is important to kind of have that foundationally, and then if you want to create specific experiences for different groups that are really targeted for them, that's important too. You can identify certain capabilities that could need extra attention, and we do that both individually and in groups. And we find that I think there was a chat question like this, with the pandemic, how has leadership shifted? I think that now leaders need to be more intentional than they ever have around how they lead, right? And so different skill sets are emerging as being important. It's certainly, we've mentioned some of them, the empathy, emotional intelligence, being able to kind of balance that business savvy with the people side of their leadership skills. And so there's a lot of focus on that, and how do you lead, you know, hybrid work teams, and how do you get your head around all the new work models that are emerging. Now it's going to take a different type of leader, I think, than we have seen in the past. And so, you know, regardless of your gender or, you know, your background, it's going to take all kinds of folks to make it happen. So I think the leader development space is going to grow exponentially here, and there's a lot of opportunity to apply lessons in different creative ways. So it's been
Hope
fun to
so.
listen to what those are tonight.
Yeah,
You know?
I hope so. We're moving to hybrid work models. It's going to be quite an interesting future that's coming pretty much before the year end. It already exists in part, but I'm sure it's going to be even more sophisticated and different. Thank you,
Tina,
Angie.
I would just kind of piggyback on that and would say maybe a slightly counter opinion on that it's going to take a different leader. I think it actually just emphasizes the need for all the leadership behaviors that we've already defined. I don't think they're different. I think they got to get even better at the ones that we've already defined are needed in terms of developing a team and collaboration and you know, accountability and inclusion and respect, and you know, all of those leadership behaviors that we emphasize. I think it just exacerbates the need for that development. And I think, you know, somebody in the chat I just caught, you know, was asking maybe how this changes in, you know, because of the pandemic. And I would say I think it accelerates our need to do this. And our team had to quickly, we were doing this leadership development program in a very old-fashioned way that people liked, but we were flying people in and doing it in person for 4 days in a row and instructor led, and we, you know, quickly took the whole thing virtual, and now we do it in 2-hour chunks over time instead, and have changed the reinforcement plan, you know, for the 6 months post going through it, and it's working phenomenally well. And the feedback on the sessions are just as good from the virtual as they miss some of it, obviously, but the actual content, you know, feedback is just as good as it was before, which I frankly wouldn't have guessed would have been, you know, that good. So, you know, so again, I just think, you know, we can't take our eye off of it. You know, I just don't, we're super busy. We have way too many priorities. And you know, we just keep emphasizing we can't take our eye off of the leadership development piece.
Thank you. And indeed, I agree with you that we need leaders who will really preach and go deeper into being better leaders, and all of the and practicing the competencies and all of the inspiring ways of engaging people, even more so from a distance. What I think we are all struggling a bit is those relations, those virtual relations, at a time where everybody's going through some sort of additional challenge, personal, health-wise, or working remotely. But more to come on that, right, Beth? I'm sure that you're probably living this on a day-to-day since the beginning of the pandemic. Folks, I'm mindful of the time, so I wanted to, we still have a few questions, and as I said, we're going to download the questions that are on the chat and share them with our panelists. But I wanted to ask you if you would please provide some feedback. And I'm going to show you the results in just a minute. But if you ever used this website or this service called Poll Everywhere, here are the instructions. I wanted to ask you to please open your browser. It's going to ask you for a code, which is women, all capitals. Or if you prefer, you could just send a text message to 37607 and type women. Okay. and provide us feedback about what you got out of this session. We will love to get your opinion. You shared your expectations at the beginning, the reason why you joined tonight. We want to now learn more about what you got out of it. Okay. Was everybody able to access? Because I'm going to show you the results in just a second while you are at it. So let's see. Aha. Oh, look at that. It's coming. Assessing is not obsessing. I love that. Get a personal board of directors. Another great one. Grit. Personal board of directors. So many wonderful responses. Ready mode, stamina. Rejection is indication is magic. It is. It really is. AI and virtual reality. Wow. I love it. And we're going to share the results on all of your responses here. You're able to add more than one comment if you like. But with that, and I'm going to come back. Oops, emotional intelligence, reframing, rebadging, thoughts and experiences related to rejection and failure. Love this one. Okay. Please keep adding because I'm going to download it and share with everyone. It continues to capture. But I wanted to bring you, of course, I want to leave you with the appetite to come back. And on April 15th at 6 p.m., recall that our monthly meetings happen every third Thursday of the month. We are going to have two other phenomenal presenters. And this is Jess Harris, who's the Director of People and Culture with Virgin Orbit. And that's the Virgin that we all know about. And Laura Pickle, who's the learning experience designer with Lyft. And in addition to everything that they do in their jobs, they are also instructors for Stanford. And they are offering this event especially for the chapter, which is a session focusing on how to build trust in the digital classroom. But they are adapting not just for purposes of those of us who are in the learning space, but they also want to go over how to build that trust or how to build that bridge in online meetings as well. Okay, so please plan and join us. It's going to be certainly a great opportunity. If any of you know Jess and Laura, you will see how engaging and wonderful they are. And not to mention, of course, that Laura comes from IDEO, which has a huge reputation for being a great and innovative organization. So please join us if you will. And looking at what's planned ahead, we still have plenty coming up. So on May, the April session is Jesse's and Laura's, but then in May, we're going to talk about organizational network analysis and how to map out how informal relations and networks impact organizations and the way they communicate, they make decisions, how they can become more productive, and the list goes on. I have a big surprise for you in June with another leadership panel to talk about about strategies to lead, attract, and engage the workforce. So a lot to come. And unfortunately, the time is up. I wished we could have more time, but I wanted to do once again thank you, our phenomenal panelists. I said this before. I think this is going to be the best event of the year. But their generosity, you have no idea. Those of you who joined tonight, their generosity and the time they took to think it through. Angie Brainerd even shared a material that's going to be posted with on the same page where the recording of this session will be posted, so you can download it. Okay, so thank you all very much and have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
What
you.
a great night. Thank you so much, Nina.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate meeting with all the panelists. Thank you so much. And a wonderful group. Thank you.
It is. Thank you so much.
Great. Oops.